Here is something that should genuinely disturb you. The foods that once protected entire families from digestive collapse, chronic inflammation, and the slow breakdown of the gut did not disappear because they stopped working. They disappeared because modern food became more profitable. The moment traditional fermentation quietly vanished from the kitchen. And the most unsettling part is this. Some of the most powerful gut-healing foods on Earth still take less than 3 days to make. In 1908, a Russian scientist named Elie Mechnikov won the Nobel Prize in Medicine after publishing research arguing that much of human disease begins in the gut, and that traditional fermented foods consumed daily by long-living cultures were one of the most powerful defenses the human body had ever discovered. The medical establishment largely ignored him. Drug companies had more profitable things to sell, and the processed food industry that was beginning to industrialize the American diet had every reason to make sure the fermented foods your grandmother kept alive on her kitchen counter never competed with what they were about to put in a box. And somewhere between that world and the one we live in now, fermented foods that families once kept bubbling quietly in clay pots, glass jars, and dark kitchen corners disappeared almost overnight. Not because they stopped working, because boxed food lasted longer on shelves. Pills generated more money than prevention, and modern life trained people to see fermentation as old-fashioned instead of medicinal. The result is a generation living with bloating, exhaustion, inflammation, sluggish digestion, and gut problems their great-grandparents barely recognized as normal aging. What traditional kitchens treated with salt, water, vegetables, and thyme now gets managed with prescriptions. Today, we bring those foods back, all 13 of them, simple, alive, and ready in less than 3 days. And item number 7 on this list is made from something most people already have sitting in their kitchen right now. Yet it produces probiotic strains, commercial yogurt, cannot even come close to delivering. Subscribe to Longevity Homesteading right now and drop a comment telling us which of these fermented foods you have actually tried before. Most people watching this have never made even one of them. Most people peel a pineapple, throw the skin away, and never think about it again. Traditional Mexican families looked at that same pineapple rind and saw one of the fastest gut-healing ferments they could make at home. That drink is tepache. Pineapple skin and core are placed into water with raw sugar, cinnamon, and cloves, then left to ferment for just 2 days. Wild bacteria, living naturally on the pineapple, begin transforming the liquid almost immediately into a lightly fizzy probiotic drink packed with digestive enzymes and anti-inflammatory compounds. And one of the most powerful parts of tepache is bromelain, an enzyme modern supplement companies isolate and sell separately in capsules for digestion and inflammation support. 2 days. The part of the pineapple most people throw away becomes a living, fermented drink your gut immediately recognizes as food. Eastern European grandmothers kept beet kvass in dark kitchen corners the same way modern families keep medicine in bathroom cabinets. Not because tradition told them to, because they watched it work. Raw beets are chopped into cubes, covered with salted water, and left to ferment for just a few days until the liquid turns deep ruby red and alive with beneficial bacteria. What forms inside that jar is a probiotic tonic rich in natural compounds linked to better blood flow, liver support, digestive repair, and lower inflammation throughout the body. Modern research now confirms exactly why traditional families protected this drink so carefully. Healthier circulation, stronger digestion, improved detoxification, and more stable energy without stimulants. 1 small glass before meals. A preparation so simple most people would mistake it for ordinary kitchen scraps. Quinoa Rejuvlac looks almost too simple to be powerful. Just sprouted grain and water sitting quietly on a kitchen counter for 2 to 3 days. But natural healing communities have relied on it for generations because of what happens during that fermentation process. As quinoa begins to sprout, dormant enzymes wake up inside the grain. Then fermentation takes over, transforming the water into a cloudy probiotic tonic loaded with living bacteria, active enzymes, and nutrients the body absorbs unusually fast. People traditionally drank Rejuvelac before meals because it helped the body break food down more efficiently while supporting the gut at the same time. No expensive equipment, no complicated recipe. Just grain, water, time, and a fermentation process modern nutrition quietly moved away from. Lacto-fermented blueberries may be one of the most quietly advanced preparations on this entire list. Fresh blueberries are mixed with a small amount of sea salt and left to ferment for several days until the berries soften, darken, and begin producing beneficial bacteria naturally. But the real transformation happens underneath the surface. During fermentation, compounds locked inside the blueberries begin breaking down into forms the body absorbs far more easily, while the natural sugar content drops at the same time. The result is a fermented food linked to better gut balance, lower inflammation, and stronger protection against cellular stress throughout the body. 4 days, 2 ingredients, and a preparation most people would never guess is doing this much work internally. 4 fermented foods from completely different corners of the world. 1 from ancient Mexican kitchens, 1 from Eastern European root cellars, 1 from natural healing communities, 1 hiding quietly inside an ordinary bowl of blueberries, all built around the same forgotten understanding. The gut heals fastest when food is still alive. Fermented carrots with ginger were prepared for generations in healing kitchens because they were gentle enough for weakened digestion, but strong enough to calm inflammation at the same time. That balance is rare. Thin carrot slices are packed into salt water with fresh ginger and left to ferment for several days until the liquid turns lightly cloudy and naturally active with beneficial bacteria. But one of the most interesting things about this preparation is what happens to the carrots themselves during fermentation. The fiber begins softening, natural compounds become easier to absorb, and the finished ferment becomes noticeably easier on the digestive system than raw vegetables alone. The ginger adds another layer entirely, warming the gut, stimulating digestion, and helping the stomach process food more efficiently. 3 days, 4 ingredients, and one of the gentlest ways to start rebuilding an irritated gut naturally. In 1964, a woman named Doris Gregg was told by her doctor in rural Tennessee that the digestive damage she was living with would likely follow her for the rest of her life. Restricted eating, constant discomfort, slow physical decline. At 43 years old, she was already being told to prepare for limitation instead of recovery. She refused. Instead, she went back to something she had watched her Appalachian grandmother do quietly for years, without ever calling it medicine. Fermenting water kefir on the kitchen counter, beside jars of vegetables bubbling slowly in salt brine through the winter. Water kefir grains are small crystal-like cultures of beneficial bacteria, and yeast placed into sugar water and left to ferment for just 1 to 2 days, until the liquid becomes lightly fizzy and alive with probiotics completely different from those found in yogurt or kombucha. Within months, Doris said her digestion changed dramatically. Her energy returned. Foods that once caused pain became manageable again, and she spent the rest of her life teaching other women the same forgotten preparation. Her doctors called it impossible. Her results called it something else entirely. Kimchi was never just food in Korea, it was survival. Entire families gathered every autumn to prepare massive batches before winter arrived, preserving vegetables in salt, garlic, ginger, and fermentation, the same way other civilizations preserved grain or firewood. That tradition became so culturally important UNESCO eventually recognized it as part of humanity's living heritage. Quick kimchi still follows the same basic process today. Cabbage, garlic, ginger, peppers, and salt left to ferment until the vegetables soften and beneficial bacteria begin multiplying rapidly inside the jar. Modern research now links kimchi directly to lower inflation, stronger immune response, improved digestion, and healthier metabolic function. But Korean families protected it long before laboratories existed, because they already watched what happened to people who ate it consistently. Thousands of winters already proved the point. Probiotic gut shot sounds almost ridiculous when you first hear what it is. Vegetables sitting in salted water for several days. That is all. But Roman military physicians distributed fermented vegetable brine across the empire because they discovered soldiers drinking it, stayed healthier, digested food better, and resisted illness more effectively during brutal campaigns. The fermentation produced organic acids and beneficial bacteria that helped protect the gut in conditions that destroyed men who did not have it. And when Roman soldiers marched for days with limited access to clean water, it was often fermented brine that kept them standing. 3 days, salt, water, vegetables, and one preparation powerful enough to travel with an empire. Sauerkraut is one of the few fermented foods multiple civilizations discovered independently without ever communicating with each other. German villages, frontier American families, Korean kitchens across the world, different cultures, same conclusion. Salted, fermented cabbage did something ordinary vegetables alone could not do. Quick sauerkraut is made by massaging shredded cabbage with salt until the vegetable releases its own liquid naturally, then allowing it to ferment beneath that brine for several days. During that process, beneficial bacteria rapidly multiply while the cabbage itself becomes easier to digest and gentler on the gut. Modern science now confirms the same bacterial activity found in sauerkraut also appears in some of the most respected fermented foods on Earth. 3 days, cabbage and salt, and a preparation humanity rediscovered over and over again because it kept working. Misamite spread is the only preparation on this list that requires almost no waiting at all, because the fermentation has already happened before it reaches your kitchen. Raw unpasteurized miso is mixed with tahini into a thick savory spread packed with living cultures, beneficial enzymes, and fermented compounds traditional Japanese kitchens relied on for generations. But one rule matters more than anything else. Heat destroys it. The moment raw miso gets cooked at high temperatures, much of the living activity that made it valuable begins disappearing rapidly. That is why traditional preparations treated fermented miso carefully instead of casually boiling it into heavily processed meals. 2 ingredients, no equipment, no fermentation setup, and one of the fastest ways on this list to get living fermented cultures back into the digestive system immediately. 2 fermented foods from opposite sides of the world. One preserved through Japanese kitchens for centuries. One rediscovered again and again in European villages and frontier homes, both built around the same forgotten reality. When food stays alive, the body responds differently to it. Pickled red onions have been sitting quietly beside meals across Mexican kitchens, Middle Eastern tables, and Southern food traditions for generations without most people ever realizing they were consuming a living fermented food. Thin slices of red onion are placed into salted brine with mustard seeds and left to ferment until the sharp bite softens and beneficial bacteria begin developing naturally. But the onions themselves are doing more work than most people realize. Natural sulfur compounds inside red onions support digestion directly, while fermentation adds probiotic activity that helps strengthen microbial balance inside the gut at the same time. The result is something strangely humble, a preparation so ordinary most families stopped noticing it entirely. 3 days, a jar of onions, and one more example of healing foods hiding in plain sight for generations. Probiotic coconut yogurt removes almost every excuse people make for avoiding fermented foods consistently. No dairy, no complicated equipment, no weeks of waiting. Just coconut cream and live probiotic cultures transforming quietly over 1 to 2 days into a thick fermented yogurt loaded with beneficial bacteria the gut immediately recognizes. But what makes homemade versions especially important is what they do not contain. No stabilizers, no gums, no heavily processed additives designed to imitate texture while quietly irritating the digestive system underneath. Traditional fermentation creates the texture naturally, and because the bacteria remain alive, the finished yogurt delivers a concentration of active cultures many commercial products never actually reach. One jar, one day, and a fermented food gentle enough for people whose digestion has already become sensitive from years of processed eating. Fermented elderberry tonic closes this list the same way the best traditional remedies always closed, quietly, without advertising, without laboratories, without anyone needing to convince entire generations it worked. Across Appalachian communities, European villages, and old homestead kitchens, elderberries were fermented and stored through cold seasons, because families noticed something important happened when sickness moved through the house. The people consuming elderberry preparations often recovered faster and stayed stronger while everyone else struggled longer. Modern research now links elderberries to powerful antioxidant activity, immune support, and compounds capable of helping the body resist viral stress naturally. But fermentation changes the preparation even further. The process breaks open the berry structure itself, making many of those compounds easier for the body to absorb while adding living probiotic activity at the same time. And unlike heavily processed syrups loaded with sugar, fermented elderberry tonic still arrives alive. A dark jar sitting quietly in a cold kitchen corner, 3 days, and generations of people trusting the same preparation long before modern medicine ever arrived. And maybe that is what makes all of this so difficult to ignore once you see it clearly. None of these fermented foods were created inside billion-dollar laboratories. They came from ordinary kitchens, from grandparents surviving harsh winters, from families preserving food before refrigeration existed, from cultures that understood something modern life slowly forgot. When food stays alive, people often stay stronger too. And now modern science is quietly circling back to confirm what traditional kitchens already knew. Long before anyone measured gut bacteria under a microscope, the bloating eases, digestion changes, energy returns, sometimes faster than people expect. Not because of something futuristic, because of salt, water, vegetables, time, and living food the modern world almost abandoned completely. If this video opened something in you, subscribe to Longevity Homesteading and become part of the small group of people rediscovering the healing systems ancient cultures protected for generations.